Hello, everyone. This is Lou Weiss from Manufacturing Talk Radio with my good buddy, Harry Moser from Moser on Manufacturing and Reshoring Initiative. Harry, welcome to the show again.
Lou, it's great to be back. This is probably my ninth or something
I
in
think
all
so.
time.
And I still haven't gotten that T-shirt that you're wearing. Show me the T-shirt.
Let's see, I'll take it off right now. You see how your ratings go up with the women when I take the shirt off.
Yeah, well, they're liable to all run for the hills. Anyway, Harry, it's great to have you again.
Yep, thanks.
So what are you talking about today?
Now we're talking about the article number 6 in my IMTS 20 article reshoring series. And the title of that article was Proposing a Goal for U.S. Manufacturing Success. So essentially, instead of just sort of floundering around and let's do this, let's do that, the idea is to establish a goal and then knowing where we're going, that should tell us how to get there. So the focus today is where should we be going? What would be the right thing for U.S. manufacturing?
Well, you tell us. I've been doing this now for only 10 years. You've been doing your thing for how long?
12.
All right, so between the two of us, it's almost a quarter of a century.
But my beard isn't as pretty as yours yet.
Well, you're not as old as I am.
Yeah, by 1 year.
Really?
Yeah.
Only 1 year?
78. You said you were 79.
I'm 79.
Okay.
Maybe we should throw a party together at 157 years of input into manufacturing. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right, Harry, let's get with it.
So you asked me what the goals should be, and for us, and I'd say for the government, for most serious manufacturing associations, groups, it should be to reduce the $1 trillion goods trade deficit, ideally to zero, to get it down to zero. So collectively, all countries have in effect a zero, but some have huge surpluses like Germany and China, and others have huge deficits, and we're by far the worst. So last year was 1.1 trillion. So that's $1,100 billion of trade deficit. And that means we imported $1 trillion more than we exported.
Right.
And that $1 trillion represents, to eliminate it, would increase US manufacturing by 40 to 50%. It would be 5 or 6 million US manufacturing jobs.
My opinion, and I've mentioned it many, many times on Manufacturing Talk Radio and so on, that our debt, you ready for this? Don't spit out your coffee. Our debt will never be paid.
There's a lot of the financial investment experts that I read, people like Ray Dalio,
yes.
John Malden, very sophisticated, very competent people like that would tend to agree with you that the U.S. has passed the point where yes, our debt can be paid off. And the interesting thing is, when most people talk about the debt, they talk about the actual U.S. debt, which is like treasury bonds and such, which is, I don't know, 20, 30 trillion dollars, something like that.
Right.
But they ignore the unfunded liability for Social Security, for Medicare, for government employee retirements, all the state pension programs. And when you put all that together, you come up with something on the order of $100 trillion instead of 20. And these economists are saying 20, I don't think we'll ever pay off the 20. Well, good luck on 100. So most of these economists say that the most likely solution will be raging inflation, which will reduce the effective value of those bonds. So if we have 500% inflation and everybody's wages, everything goes up by a factor of 5, then the debt goes from 20 trillion down to 4 in effect, because you're paying it off with those inflated dollars. So the people who are holding that debt are likely to get screwed. Now, the people that have Social Security that's indexed for inflation, they'll have to be kept whole unless they change those laws.
Let me point out to you a personal story, just as a diversion. I'm on Social Security. I get X. I have an ex-wife that I was married to for 15 years. So she gets half X. And I have a disabled adult daughter, and she gets half X. So I get 2X Social Security. How does that work with our government?
Well,
How many?
first, I think I'd correct one of the things you said. Because your ex-wife hasn't remarried and she has access to your Social Security, I think she gets half of X and you get half of X.
No,
So
no.
go
I
check
get
with
the
your
whole
accountant.
thing.
No, check with your accountant. I bet you'll find out that you're getting half and she's getting half. So next time we talk, you tell me what you find out.
Okay. I won't argue with you because you're smarter than I am. But
Well,
I get a whole, and my two other halves get halves.
okay. So
That being the case,
there's a lot of cases like that where there's what I'll call leakage in the Social Security system, where there's
yep,
people who come over here and let's say immigrants, and they come over here at the age of 50 and they work for 5 years in a low-paid job and they get a substantial Social Security payment, way disproportionate to what you and I get. Now,
right.
I paid the maximum all my life, and I worked for 50, 55 years paying in.
So
And
you're a kid.
yeah, and when in terms of what I get, I'll never get back the dollars I put in, much less get any income on it, interest on it. Whereas the people that were making less money or only worked a few years, they quickly get back what they put in. So there's a lot of ways in which Lou and Harry are not winning on the Social Security
Yeah,
game. But
but you
it
know
sounds
what?
like you're doing pretty well.
But you know what?
Yeah,
That's okay. That's okay. I'm doing okay. You're doing okay.
I'm doing
But
okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
and so immigrants come to. We need immigrants here.
I agree
We
entirely.
need we
Yeah,
need to bring over talented, skilled Ukrainians.
agree 100%. So I'm all in favor of immigration of skilled people, tool makers, welders, precision machinists,
Absolutely.
programmers, entirely in favor of it. I just don't want it to be more of a burden on the Social Security system than it is.
Well, if
Anyway,
one of the parties have anything to do with anything, they may try and do away with Social Security.
I don't think nobody, I think they all know they can't do that,
Right.
but they nibble around the edges. Mainly they try to tax people more,
Yes.
or give people like Lou Weiss with really high incomes, they try to give them less
Right.
than they would otherwise. That
Right.
tends to be because it's pretty easy to attack the 1%, because the 90% will support attacking the 1%.
And that's why you and I will never retire.
Anyway, we should go back and talk about the trade deficit.
Sure.
So
Go for it.
as I pointed out, eliminating it would increase U.S. output by 40 or 50%, and the value of that is it can be seen in reducing the budget deficit. All those people working, paying good manufacturing jobs, paying taxes, the owners of their companies paying taxes, budget deficit comes down. That helps. Yeah. Not having the huge trade deficit, that means we don't have those trillions of dollars sitting offshore, especially in China, that eventually they can claim our assets for. Reduces emissions, making it here instead of making it there and shipping it here reduces the emissions. And for the country just being self-sufficient today, especially given the issues we see in the world with Russia, China, et cetera, just being self-sufficient either within the country or including, say, Mexico and Canada. There's a lot lot of, I'll sleep easier at night when I know that the U.S. could survive without China, without Russia, without some of the places you don't want to depend on.
Right, right. Talked about the reshoring of 250,000 jobs a year.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
So it happened last year,
Yes,
260,000 by our count.
right,
Let's say announcements of 260,000. So some of the biggest pieces of that, or let's say almost all the biggest pieces of that, were these chip foundries, EV battery plants, big things, some big pharma projects. So some hydrogen production, green hydrogen for cars, and when you get those big plants, the gigafactory kind of thing, they announce them, they commit to them today, and a lot of people get jobs doing construction, but the manufacturing people often aren't hired until a year or 2 years from now. So the actual employment in manufacturing is we figure is delayed a year or two from the announcement.
right,
Because
right,
otherwise, if it was 250,000 actual increase this year, then the unfilled manufacturing jobs number would be even bigger than it is. So in effect, that gives the communities, the workers, so on, time to respond, to get more kids trained and be available.
One of the things that I've been researching on a personal level with regards to energy, we're going to start seeing and hearing a lot more about this, and that is wave technology. There's not a lot of talk about this. Wave technology doesn't require sun, wind, oil, gas, but wave technology in Europe, particularly right now in Norway, is now representing about 10% of the country's energy with a very low cost. This is something that this country really need. Thank goodness they're now with the new bill that was just passed. We're going to have our own chip factories. I forgot the number. I think it's something like $2 billion, so we don't have to buy those from China.
More like 50 billion.
Thank you. 50 billion. 2 billion, 50 billion.
Yes, pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Yeah, right. But wave technology, you'll never run out of waves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
and
and
I've been reading about it for decades. Is it? And it sounds like you're saying that over in Europe it's actually happening and it's
it is
successful.
happening. It
Yeah.
is happening. Norway is actually the leader
Mm-hmm.
with wave technology, and the technology itself, I've done some reading on it. It's really mind blowing on how they do it. The waves. It keeps the turbines running, and they have a turbine in the East River of New York City that they've been experimenting with. And about every 3 or 4 months, they have to take the turbine out of the water because it's beat to hell because of all the stuff that's
All the
floating.
garbage that's floating down the river.
Garbage, telephone poles, bodies.
Bodies. We both
Bodies,
said
yeah.
bodies.
Bodies is a real problem in New York.
Guess how it would be in Chicago.
Yeah, really, really. I'm not sure they have that much in the way of waves, but
Yeah.
we have to be looking at new waves or
Yeah.
ways
Yeah.
to develop technology, bring in the people, be it immigrants, be it uh, college kids, and teach them about what they need to do to go forward and earn a good living, good money, and so on and so forth.
No, interestingly, I saw the results of a study that said that compared the talents or skills of students like math, science, English, what have you, to to their awareness of occupations.
Right.
And manufacturing had one of the worst outcomes because of the students who had the skills that would make them a good manufacturer, certain math, etc., they only a third of them were aware of manufacturing as a career.
Yes.
Whereas if you took something like art and music, then the number who were aware of the career was 3 times the number that had skills. So there are a
Do you
lot of
have any,
wannabe artists, but there aren't many wannabe machinists.
do you have any idea how many people are going to college for film editing?
Way too many.
It's huge.
Actually, similar with journalism. So I get interviewed. I just got interviewed a couple of days ago by the Wall Street Journal. In fact, an article is supposed to be coming out tomorrow.
Huh?
And yeah, maybe in the digital issue, I'm not sure. But typically when I'm talking to a reporter, especially from a small, like the Picayune Gazette, that kind of place,
Yeah, right.
and
Being
I
like
say,
us.
no, nothing like as fancy as you are, but I'll have just an average kind of reporter out there, and he'll bring up skilled workforce. I say, it's really hard to get the kids into becoming tool makers and welders, precision machinists, and making $50,000-$100,000 a year because they all think they're going to become reporters and make the big bucks.
Yeah.
And the reality is that now with print in a decline, most of
Yes.
those reporters at the small places aren't making much anything at all, and they'd be better off if they were tool makers and welders.
Correct. They all wind up on CNN. Meanwhile, an underwater welder starting right out of school earns $150,000.
Oh yeah, that's a tough job, huh?
Yeah, you bet.
You need skill, and you're sort of risking your life when you're down there doing
Every
that.
time.
Yeah, yeah. No, they deserve it. I'm saying, yeah.
They do. They
So
do.
let's go back a little bit to the jobs and the model that I see getting to a consistent net addition to the U.S. of 250,000 jobs a year, which I think is as much as our workforce system can handle. To put the numbers in perspective, we're still probably offshoring 100,000 jobs a year. There's work going to Mexico, there's work going to China, there's work going to India. So somewhere or other, there's some stuff that's moving out, and uh, so we'd like to get the rate coming back in to say 300,000. That would give us net 200,000. And if we do that, we could, if we've done it by making the U.S. more competitive, better skilled workforce, lower dollar, things like that, then we ought to be able to increase exports by 50,000 jobs a year.
Mhm.
So 300,000 more reshoring and FDI, plus 50 on exports, we're up to 350, lose 100 to offshoring. So now we got a net of 250. So that's the model I'd like to see. And if we do that, then in 20 years, we'll bring back the 5 million jobs that's required to balance the goods trade deficit. Okay, so we're not talking about tomorrow. We're not talking, people say, Harry, you can't get that done in a week. No, I'm going to get it done in 20 years if I'm lucky.
But just for our audience, manufacturing at one point was 40 million, and now we're at 11.
Yeah, and put it even bigger perspective, it's used to be, I don't know, 30% of total employment, and now it's like 8 or 9% of
Yes.
total employment. And some economists, some pundits, some talking heads would say, well, that always happens to the high income places, the developed countries, because you shove all that dirty work off to the Chinese and the Indians.
Right.
But the Germans, it's if it's 9% of our employment, it's 20% or 25% of theirs. For the Japanese, it's 18. For the South Koreans, it's 18 or 20. So it's very possible. I mean, even the French, I think it's a higher percentage than it is for us.
And
So
they drink a lot.
and they drink. Maybe that makes them good programmers. I don't know, but it's entirely possible. It's very feasible for a country to be strong manufacturing, even when it has high income and it being a really developed country like the United States.
We have, needless to say, we've got lots of problems and lots of issues. We have a divided political system right now, and that certainly works against us in many ways. And I'm hopeful that we can ultimately all come together and realize that it takes both halves to make all this work together.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to discuss with the Biden administration all the time and communicate with them. Like, eventually we're going to have a show on my hearing that was down in Washington D.C. on June 9th, and they listen. They politely listen. But the problem is that there's 100 Harry Mosers of various kinds and Lou Weisses coming to them with ideas, and then they already have their ideas. So for the being one of 100 trying to give them something, it's so easy for them to ignore
Yeah,
and focus on something else. And so all I can do is keep pitching.
just keep pounding the door.
Yep.
I get that. And, I enjoy what I do, and I like getting the message out to the people. And I certainly welcome your joining us in getting this message out. So, Harry, what's the next step?
Oh, I should remember. I don't remember. Pretty soon, we're going to get on to um, what the country has to do to become competitive enough, and specifically what the U.S. has to do, what states and communities can do, especially skilled workforce, what OEMs can do, the big companies, the GM kind of people, what the contract manufacturers, the supply chain companies like yours, what they need to do, and there's lots they can do. We say that the playing field is tilted. The U.S. is at a cost disadvantage, but even in that condition, if the companies are smart, they do the math correctly, they do good training, they do automation, that they can still win. They can still bring lots of work back. So
Yeah.
we're going to show them how.
One of the things that I picked up on this past week with the passing of the uh, new bill that the Biden administration has passed, where they want to uh, tax corporations, the large corporations who pay no tax, and they want to collect a minimum tax. I don't remember if it's 10% or 15%.
15%.
So why not give them the benefit? Don't make it 15%, make it 10 or 12, but of the leftover, to use that money to reinvest instead of having the government do it. The government doesn't do a good job, in
I
my opinion.
agree. I agree.
You got it? They don't
Yeah.
do a good job of handling money.
No.
So let the corporation give them a benefit. Keep your 15%, take 10% of it and reinvest it, put in training programs, teach the kids how to do this, that, and the other thing. It's going to go a lot better than giving it to Uncle Sam.
Because you give it to Uncle Sam and he hires 1,000 bureaucrats like they're going to hire 80,000 IRS agents,
No, really.
all of whom are going to be looking at Lou Weiss.
Right. And they're not getting squat from me because I got nothing compared to the big guys.
But they're going to hire lots and lots of federal employees,
Yes,
and then they get state employees out there, and almost all the money winds up going into that bureaucracy
yes,
instead of getting to the actual to funding apprenticeships, to helping companies buy equipment, to helping companies go lean. It winds up being there's a lot of friction being wasted and all the money flowing around here. And so I like your idea, but the companies are already doing a pretty good job on workforce, and there's the investment, for example, in machine tools. The first 4 or 5 months this year, we're setting records, the sales of
records,
machine tools. Okay, so the
records.
companies have been doing a pretty good job, and I believe that you're instead of saying keep 2% and you got to hire more. Well, how do you know what's the basis from which you compare the increase? That's a tough thing. But I think the government should be leveling the playing field so that companies understand that if they invest in the U.S., they'll get the best return on investment they can get anywhere in the world. And so I think the effort should be to creating an environment in which companies will be focused on growth and hiring and investment, and I believe that will work.
Well, part of the problem is not even so much the companies as it is Wall Street,
Mm-hmm.
the shareholders, return on investment. They'll absolutely have I can't say it because it's going to be dirty. They they need to invest the money back into the system and not give it as much to the shareholders.
No, I agree. But when the companies see that they can get a good return on investment, when they see that our cost structure is such that if a shop like yours puts another $5 million into new equipment, that you'll get a good return on investment, I believe you'll do it. And you'll be able to borrow the money to do it. So first you got to level the playing field. Then you have to have reshoring coming back. So I'm doing a paper on this actually that says this is the right time for capital investment, because capital investment accelerates when companies capacity utilization gets to 80% and above when they're busy. Because when they're busy, they need more capacity and they're making money because they're busy and they can afford more capacity. Okay, so we're right at that 80% node right now. Reshoring is bringing the jobs back and will keep that going. So the capacity utilization ought to keep going up. We still have the 100% immediate expensing this year. So companies out there, if you buy capital equipment, get it installed this year, you can write the whole thing off this year. Right. Whereas next year it's going to be 80%, and the year after that 60%. So I've got an article coming out that's going to list 3 or 4 factors like that says you're never going to have a better time than right now to invest in capital equipment and get this thing going. And if you do that and you expand and you get more productive, then your costs come down, then you can reshore more. And we have a virtuous cycle, and things are like this. And the world and the US is just cracking again. And that's what you and I are going to do for them, Lou.
So what I want you to do is send me a copy of your article so I could put it in Manufacturing Outlook e-zine, and to get the message out to even that many more people.
Okay, it's okay. I'm not sure if it's done. It might be a week or 2 away from being done.
No problem.
It'll be on my list to get to you.
You bet. Thank you. So what's next?
As I said, we're going to go next into what everybody can do to make this happen. One thing for everybody who's listening out there, in addition to being a manufacturer, you're a consumer. And if every time you go into a store and you look for something and you don't find anything made in USA, go to the customer service desk and say, I want to buy a hammer, but I can't find a hammer there made in the United States. Would you get some US hammers? And if enough of us come to them and say, I want to buy something made in I'll pay a little more, I'll pay 20% more, I'll do whatever, as long as it's good quality made in USA. So I think all of us, if we wear our hats as a voter, to get good legislation passed, as a manufacturer, as a buyer and seller in manufacturing, given the domestic product a chance, as a consumer, if we buy the made in USA product and ask for it anytime we can, it's going to be great.
Well, the previous administration instituted tariffs on imports. Basically, what they did was they instituted tariffs on the American public, which of course had a negative effect on inflation and so on and so forth. Why not institute quotas so that the American public is not being taxed, which causes inflation and then maybe even ultimately a recession? Put a quota. We only want X number of hammers coming from China. We don't want to charge the American public $10 tax on that hammer. Harry?
Yeah, I hear you. we disagree to some extent on this one. I'm in favor of a value-added tax,
Okay,
which would apply a tax uniformly to everything coming in. So that the steel would be taxed, but so would the hammers and the parts made out of steel, and therefore having the steel price here a little higher wouldn't put you at a disadvantage because the steel forgings coming in from offshore would also have a value-added tax, and so things would stay in proportion. The big problem with the steel tariffs that Trump put on were that he applied them to the steel, but not to the products made out of steel. Okay, so I think there's ways to have tariffs, value-added tax, that if you do it uniformly applies to all products from all countries forever, which is what all the other countries do.
yes.
And they get away with it and it works fine. That if we do that, it'll make our products relatively more competitive. But if you, that's my view of it.
But
And
do you
yeah.
feel as though that it's the exporting company, a country importing into the US should be taxed, or should the American public be taxed?
Well, in the value-added tax, I think I can't remember whether the seller or the buyer pays the tax, but in effect, it will have an impact on the price here in the United States, and
Absolutely.
inevitably it will. But you've got to tax something, and I'd say if you have a choice, should I tax work, savings, investment, or should I tax imports? I would tax imports.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
in this particular case, the Trump administration put
Mhm.
a tariff on imports, not only
Yeah,
China, but others, but
yeah.
it's the American public, the
Mhm.
American companies. There are certain products you can't buy here. You have to buy imports. And now
I,
we have to pay a tax on that.
I understand. I've seen some studies. Again, I'm not here to defend the tariffs. I didn't support them, especially at the
And
time.
I'm
I'm
not
not.
here to beat them up.
Okay, but I have seen studies that say that when the tariffs, specifically the China Section 301 tariffs, were put in
Yes.
effect, that it had no impact on consumer prices. The consumer prices specifically, there was no blip, there was no step like that when the tariffs went in, that things just continued on in the way they were going. So now you can get three different PhD economists to do three different studies and come up with different answers. But
And you'll get mine fourth opinion, and I don't agree with you.
that's what makes our discussions good.
That's right. I'm not agreeing with my guest.
Yeah, if we were going to agree on everything, you wouldn't need me here.
This is true. This is true. Harry, it's wonderful having you here all the time.
Yep,
And you're going to be here in a month from now.
of course, of course. And anybody out there, I'll be at IMTS all 6 days, and we're going to have the onshoring project booth near the Gardner booth. I'll be speaking at in the conferences that are happening. We're having a onshoring project symposium Friday morning. We're announcing the National Metalworking Reshoring Award Friday afternoon. I'm having a press conference. We're doing all kinds of good things. I'm going to be a busy beaver there at IMTS. And if any of you can find all that on our website. And any of you that are going to IMTS, and if you show up at one of my events, I'd be delighted to see you, and we can tell stories about Lou.
And your website address is?
Reshorenow.org.
Okay. Harry, have a great show at IMTS, and we'll see you in a month.
Bye, Lou.
Take care, buddy.
Yep.
So thank you, everyone, for listening. Harry is, we're going to make a star out of him, even bigger than he already is. And if you know us, I suggest that you go to Manufacturing Talk Radio. We have 4 or 5 other video podcasts of different slices of manufacturing. We have WHAM, Women in Manufacturing, Cliff Notes, Manufacturing Matters, and 1 or 3 others. So, come and see us at jacketmediacode.com, and you can see them all. You could even see Harry. Harry, thanks a lot, buddy.
Bye, Lou. Bye,
Take
everybody.
care.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Next time.
You bet.